I don't remember, but Mother used to tell the story of when we were at Lancaster, and I was, oh, probably 2 years old or so. And they'd been driving sheep past the house, herds of sheep, because Lancaster was a very small town in those days. Anyway, we went to church on that Sunday, and the minister was reading this scripture about the shepherd watching his sheep. And Mother said, I stood up and looked on the chair and looked around. I want to see the sheep. I want to see the sheep, right in the midst of the church service. So I've always had a soft spot in my heart for that bit of scripture.
You like the sheep?
Yeah.
This was in Lancaster?
Lancaster,
Yeah.
Probably about 1908, I don't know when.
Now, where were you born?
I was born in Abilene.
In Abilene, but you don't remember that.
No.
I mean,
I would
well,
been
you don't
back-
remember when you were born.
I
but you
don't remember being born.
You don't remember living in Abilene.
No.
But you do remember Lancaster.
And I remember Grandma Blackhurst's house. Remember her funeral out under by the lilac bushes. She had big lilac bushes around the front porch. And they were, seems to me they were, I don't know if they were blooming. I don't remember what time of year she died. But anyway, the funeral was outside by her lilac bushes that she loved so well.
I've seen pictures of it, and I can visualize it. Now that was the house that had the picture on the wall behind Dad's chair.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The edge of the farm.
And then, of course, let's see, Shelbina's where, oh, you were both born in Lancaster.
Steve and I were born,
You were born in
Lancaster.
Lancaster.
But I don't remember Lancaster
You
at
don't
all.
remember being born either.
No, I don't remember being born. And I don't remember Lancaster, but I do have just a faint recollection of Shelbina. I remember the little red wagon that we kept in a closet under the
Remember how we pulled somebody, I don't know if I pulled you or if Steve pulled you out in the freshly oiled street, the little red wagon, and got oil all over the wagon and yourselves and everything,
Well,
freshly oiled street.
And Steve had a tire, and he rolled that tire down, and I was coming along behind him with
Is that
a
what
stick.
did it? That
I
may
was
have
coming
been what
along
did it.
behind him with a stick, and I had oil and tar and everything all over me.
What did
I think
Mother
we-
do?
I think we both got spanked for it. I
Sounded like
Don't
child
remember.
abuse to me.
well, it was child, what do you call it, help me out,
Control.
discipline,
Discipline.
Yeah.
discipline, which we don't seem to have much of anymore.
Well, of course, it was at Shelbina, too, that I had the scarlet fever. And one of the school teachers that stayed with us stayed with me for a week, or I think it was just a week, in the house. They sealed off what we used as the dining room. They sealed that off. Remember, even put tape around the doors. And she stayed with me for a week. After that, I stayed by myself in that room. And there was a pantry between the kitchen and the dining room. Mother would put the meals in the pantry, and then when I was finished with the meal, then she'd put in scalding water, and I'd drop them in boiling water to kill the scarlet fever germs. And when it got warm enough that I could go out and play, I crawled out the window, which was led out to a porch light thing, and played out there but anyway, that was...
But you weren't allowed in the rest of the
No.
house.
Oh, no. Not for, I don't know how long, but we were definitely quarantined.
Well, I remember when you had something at 9/11.
I remember that too.
What was it?
Well, it was scarlet fever or scarlatina. I think they thought it was scarlet fever. But Mother also brought my food up and left it by the door. There, I was in our room upstairs.
And I
And,
wasn't allowed to go up the steps, I remember.
Oh,
I don't remember that.
And we both got
Was I away
little Orphan
then?
Annie paper dolls.
I don't remember. Well, no, I don't remember that. But I remember I think I was in 4th or 5th grade. 5th grade, I think. And I got an I in spelling because I'd missed all those classes. And if you didn't take the test, you automatically got a...
And you didn't get to make them up.
And you couldn't make them up, I guess. At least I hadn't had a chance to. And that's the only time I ever got an I on my report card.
Wish I could say that.
That killed me.
I got one in art when we first came to St. Charles because we had never had art as a class before. And I didn't know anything about drawing. I wasn't all that great either.
Was Mrs. Rothroth here
Yeah.
then?
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that, do you remember how she taught art?
Oh, yes. That would be a no-no today.
Oh, my
What did
goodness.
she do?
She would, first thing she did when she would come in, she'd have fix a big place on the blackboard and she would draw some kind of a picture on the board. Then we copied it exactly as much as we could, what she had drawn on the board. Sometimes she put lines through it so we could get like the first
Oh,
half
I
or
think I
something.
remember that.
But, and now.
That would
is-
not be
oh,
considered
now
art
it's-
today.
No.
There's no freedom of expression there.
Now each child is supposed to interpret his work the way he wants to, and say today we're going to do a country scene. And each one does his own thing. Certainly don't all do the same. What's the matter?
It was windy.
We may have some more.
But when we came to St. Charles, I don't remember, how old were you, Mary? Let's see, I was 10.
I wasn't in school yet.
I was 10, you're 6 years younger. You were about 4 then, huh?
Okay.
What year did you come to St. Charles?
1926, the summer of 1926. And I was 10 that winter. Mary was 4 that winter. But
And we lived on Washington
Yeah.
Street.
But
Rented
the
it.
thing that I especially remember was how Mother had definitely told her not to ever bring that doll buggy up the steps, the back steps, the porch. Oh, there must have been 6 or 7 steps up to the back porch. And there was a bumpity, bumpity bump. And here came Mary up the step with the doll buggy. Mary Elizabeth, what did I tell you about that? You should not bring the... How did that doll buggy get up here? Well, I said to God, I want my doll buggy up. And God just reached down and he took the doll buggy up for me. Wasn't that sort of the way it went?
That's what they tell me. I don't read. I've heard
So
it.
how could Mother argue with that?
I've heard the story so much that I thought it happened over at the other place, but I don't know.
Oh, no, it
I
was at
don't
the
know.
Washington Street house.
I don't know.
Because there weren't that
But-
many steps.
And who knows, maybe God did do it for me.
That's possible. But now let's get Clarence into the act.
I'm not into
He
the act
wasn't
yet.
here yet.
I know, he's
But
not...
then, now over on Washington Street, when we first came here, we stayed there while the house was being built on Kings Highway. And while we were there, Grandma came. And did she stay with us all the time? I don't remember
Oh,
her
yes.
being with, well, I
She-
mean,
Of course, that's something Steve and I always kind of argued about, or didn't argue, we had a difference of opinion. I thought she came with us, moved here when we moved to St.
That's
Charles.
what I wondered.
I know she did, because I remember getting the letter telling of Grandpa's death when we were just getting ready to come to St. Charles. It was in May, I'm pretty sure that I'm not sure either, that he died. But anyway, she came to live with us because she had her own room there on Washington Street, just as she did on Kings Highway.
but then she went to visit with Uncle
Oh, yes,
Melvin.
she spent extended visits
and Uncle
with the
Walter
others.
because Uncle Sam came and he stayed there too.
She had extended visits with her other members of her family. But for all practical purposes, she was living with us.
And Uncle Sam was Daddy's half-brother,
Yes.
right? And he stayed with us for a
But
while.
by the time we moved to Kings Highway, then's when, let's see,
When did you move it?
when did we, I don't know when we moved there. I was in
28.
junior high.
28 would it be?
I'd have to figure that one. Maybe. When were you born?
30. Fall of 30.
It might have been 28.
I think I was in the could I have been in the second grade when he was born? Let's see, I'm 8 years older.
Yeah, you could have been.
So we were in the house, been there, oh yeah, a long time before he was born.
Yeah.
But I was in the second grade, and I was not in school yet over on Washington Street. So it would have been the year at least before that. But anyway, I remember when you were born, everybody was so excited. Daddy was so excited, and he let me go to all the neighbors and knock on their door and tell them that we had a new baby, and it was a little boy. And I was just so proud at school. And I remember Helen Deere was my teacher, and she let me, I said, I need to go see my brother, that was Steve, about the new baby, something about the new baby. Anyway, I told her I had to go. Anyway, she let me go. And what I did, I had a note for Steve that said, aren't you glad we have a new baby? Love, Mary.
Any excuse to get up and walk around.
Well, I was just so excited, and I just wanted to talk to him about it, and she let me go. I'd forgotten about that, but I know that was when he was born, and I was so excited.
Did she teach any of the others besides you and me? Did she teach Steve?
I think Steve was in her class. I'm not sure.
No, she's still alive.
Oh, yes. She was in my bridge club.
Yeah.
And I see her at the beauty shop every once in a while. She's 94, I think. 90 something or other.
Is she alert?
Just so-so. It's enough that, but she gets confused, gets things mixed up, and forgets her appointments and things like that.
Well,
But anyway, I remember how excited we all were when you were born. And I was thrilled to go to the neighbors, especially to cross the street and go to Ernie Paul's house and Hikers and Talkies over on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to
You
go
got
to
to cross
all
the
those
street.
houses. I got to cross the street. He was out there and watched while I went across.
but you didn't go to the filling station.
She
Not
didn't
that
go after
time.
left-handed
time.
monkey wrench
That was much
Yeah,
later.
later.
or a sky hook.
Yeah.
That sounded like Noel.
It
Oh, it was
Noel.
Paul Birch.
Paul
wasn't
Birch?
It
Come
was
on.
Noel that did it.
Oh. She
It
was
was
hip.
Noel that did it, but Paul Birch was in on it somehow. This was after we were older, and I should have known better. I was in junior high, I guess. No, when did you go with Noel?
38 and 39.
Well, somewhere around there. And he was trying to fix the sink for Mother in the kitchen. And he said he needed a left-handed monkey wrench. And he asked me he said we didn't have one, would I go over, I think it was to Paul Birch's, and get a left-handed monkey wrench. So, sure, went over there, and he said, you know, I don't have it anymore, or something. I don't remember. But anyway, he sent me, I think, to the filling station.
That was Wetters.
Yeah, I guess. And they were going to give me a monkey wrench, and then I said, but it has to be a left-handed one. And he kind of smiled. He said, oh, I loaned that to Max Wilner. So that was another neighbor, so I had to run over to Max Wilner's and ask them for a left-handed monkey wrench. Well, somehow I didn't get it. Anyway, I came back without any.
Did he have the sink fixed by then?
I don't know. All I know is I told him I went all over the neighborhood and tried to find a left-handed monkey wrench, and I went through all the spiel about why each one didn't have it, and Noel was rolling on the floor laughing. I never saw him laugh
Shame
so
on
hard.
him.
He really Anyway, we kind of jumped out of line there as far as when things happened, but that was funny.
Yeah, right.
But I sure bit on that one real hard.
Well, I guess we all remember playing hide and seek there in the neighborhood.
Yeah, red light, and hide and seek, draw a round circle,
Yeah.
who will put the dot?
And we played with the Fords, Ray and
Peggy and Bill.
Peggy and Bill, and then the Wilner girls were your friends.
Yes.
And I really didn't have,
Rita
well,
was pretty close to my age. She
Yes.
was- I think she was
A little older,
she was
I
2
guess.
years older.
but I didn't have anyone my age in the neighborhood until Mary Lucille moved in up the street.
Oh, yes.
Then,
Mary Lucille
Now,
Young.
were you a friend of
Yeah.
hers before she moved there?
yes,
That's,
yeah, yes, I think, yes, I know I was.
we probably should have the radio on. We may be headed for a tornado and not know it.
No, they would have forecast that earlier today if possible. But,
Well, let's see, what else happened? Then, now things we used to do, you used to go for fun. What did you used to do?
We'd go roller skating to the library, because that's where the boys hung out.
the
Oh,
library?
the library?
The one over on 6th and Jefferson.
Yeah.
We saw that listed on the internet today.
Oh, you did?
Linneman?
Only it's not on 6th and Jefferson
No,
anymore.
but they had a
now
book
it's
on it.
Right.
A book on it,
History.
in history.
Um,
Not Linneman, Linneman? Is that
Yeah,
it?
Catherine Linneman.
And we were speaking of Mary Lucille Young. She lived in the building where the library was when she was real little, before it was a library.
That's right, she did. Her grandmother was Mrs. Steinbrinker, who owned
Right.
that house, and who also owned the house that Noel and I rented.
Oh,
Later
I
on.
never realized that.
Yeah.
I knew she owned that house, but I didn't know she owned
Yeah,
the
that was the,
library.
I didn't know she owned the library either.
Mhm.
I just knew that Mary Lucille lived there.
I used to go up to Mrs. Steinbrecher's house a lot, and I'd sit on the swing with her out in front. We'd just talk and talk.
You always had a knack of getting with the older people
Well, yeah.
and talking with them.
I still seem to be with older people all the time.
Yeah, look at you now.
yeah, look at him now.
But when, the folks that lived, we were trying to think of their name. The people that lived next door, or lived in the Ford's house after Ford's left.
There was Birches after that, wasn't
No,
there?
the,
Someone in between?
Jane taught at Benton School. They had the log cabin place out there on the
Oh,
highway.
did they live there?
Frank's, yes.
That's right.
But I
Yeah,
thought-
Johnny Frank.
Johnny
That's,
Frank.
Johnny
I could
Frank.
not think of his
I
last
thought that
name.
was after the Birches, though.
I don't know
Oh,
the
maybe it
sequence.
was.
I don't know the sequence.
How old were you when Birches were there?
Well, you were doing babysitting when the
For
Birches were
Birches,
there.
but I also did some babysitting for Frank's.
I must have been 10 or 11.
Okay. For little Johnny Cake, they called him.
But I don't remember the Franks as well as I do the Birches.
Well, then I don't know who was there
And I
first.
remember
I
and
thought
then,
it was Frank's, but
and then the Stollips were in there,
I forgot.
maybe the
They
last
weren't
one.
there long. were
No,
they?
Clarence Stollips. For some reason I can remember his
Now, weren't
name.
they older
Yes.
people, and you used to go up and sit on the porch and talk with
Yeah,
them?
we'd go up and sit on his back porch with him. We'd talk about fishing. He loved to fish.
Hmm.
And he died either before they moved or shortly thereafter. He had a serious stone problem. Then I've lost track. I don't know who else.
Spraggles,
Oh yeah, Spraggles. Well, they were,
Jean and
Tom.
Tom, right.
so that they must have been.
Your car windows are closed, aren't
Yeah, I hope so. They must have been after.
They were one of the last ones well, there have been people since, but while we were home, because I was a bridesmaid for Jean and Norman's wedding, which took place at the hospital because their dad
Oh, that's right.
was in the hospital and didn't expect to live,
Mm.
and
Oh, that was nice.
it was at the hospital.
I didn't remember that. And how soon after they were married did they move to Pennsylvania? They did, didn't
I
they?
think pretty soon, didn't they? I think pretty soon.
Why, did Jean live
In
in
Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania?
I
The
said, well,
Spragles
they
came from Pennsylvania.
They came from Pennsylvania.
The family
Because
came
they-
from Pennsylvania
the year-
originally.
But they went back east somewhere.
Oh, did they?
It was the year that Edgar and I visited you and Noel in Berwick.
Yeah.
Fred went out with us. We all drove out, and we dropped Fred off at Jean and
Oh.
Norman's house.
Oh, because he was Fred Fink and she had married Norman Fink.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Norman was his mother. And then I don't remember how we got together again. We did, and then we drove back to Cincinnati, and Fred and I flew back to St. Charles.
Wow.
But anyway, well, I kind of got onto that because I thought it'd be nice for us to talk about the friends we had and who did you play with?
Oh, the early friend, of course, Ivan,
That's right,
Ivan
the Wolf
Wolf.
Boys.
was down, lived down by Duncan, across the street from Duncan.
Didn't we used to
And,
ride the wagon down the hill?
Mm-hmm. And
Ladies
roller
lived.
skate down the hill. Because there weren't any streets to cross. You could go all the way down to Gallagher
Without crossing the street.
without crossing a street.
But you had to start going uphill.
You had to be careful about going over the creek though.
Oh, one time when I was down there, you remember there was a railing there by
Yeah.
the creek?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't know that
Yeah,
I was
there's pipes
roller
on it.
skating, but I know I was doing hand turns over that thing. And somebody, I don't remember much about it, but somebody went back and told Mother and Daddy that I was down there doing flips over the railing above the creek.
Did they come down and get you?
You bet they did. And they didn't let me go down there for a long time.
That wasn't as bad as sitting up on top of the house though.
Well,
I can remember a picture of Noel and somebody sitting on top of the house at 9/11.
Oh, no. Well, this little scallywag went up there.
but I did it when I wasn't supposed to. He
Right.
probably did it when he was supposed to.
I don't ever remember a picture of Noel on top of the house.
Maybe I remember wrong, but I vaguely remember.
I don't
Oh,
know.
Maybe Mary saw him up on top of the house and decided she could get up there.
Well, no,
Oh,
I,
but you were you
I
were
was
old
little.
enough by then. By the time Noel got in the picture, you were old enough
oh
to know
yeah,
better.
oh yes. But I went up there because I had seen Steve laugh when he got spanked. And I thought that was pretty neat, or I should say cool.
And you wouldn't,
Only we
yeah,
didn't
but you
say
didn't say
cool
that in those days.
in those days. But I thought, oh, well, he can laugh. I wonder what I can do so I can get spanked, and I'm gonna laugh. So I went up on the roof. I knew that'd do it. I knew I'd get spanked for that.
Did you?
Yes. You bet I did. I had to go to the closet in the bathroom and get that little paddle out, bring it to Mother. She spanked me, and I couldn't laugh. I tried, and I couldn't. And when I took the paddle back to the bathroom closet, I locked the door of the bathroom and just lay on the floor, and I cried and cried and cried. So it just didn't work at all. It didn't.
Did you
It
try it
didn't
again?
pay. No, I didn't even try it again. I decided it wasn't worth it.
The spanking did its job.
Well, she gave me a good one.
I don't think she ever used a paddle.
Oh, I think I got spanked more than anybody.
Well, you deserved it more than the rest of us.
You challenged the master.
I don't know, but it just seemed like I was always getting spanked there for a while.
I can remember running away from Mother when she wanted to spank me, and I'd run around the dining room table.
But I bet she caught you.
And actually, Dad came home,
Oh.
and I got the flick of the wrist. Did you ever get that?
No.
Oh, that scared me to death.
Did that hurt?
Not really, but it was,
It just scared you?
I really hated that. And boy, I didn't want to have that, get the flip.
I don't ever remember Daddy spanking me or giving me the flip.
Yeah, you get his finger out like that.
I guess that could hurt. I don't know.
It's just
Maybe young
just a-
parents could use that as their discipline measures today.
might work. Yeah, I don't know, but I didn't want to do it. I wanted to avoid that. But I was so good that I barely got spanked.
You were a good kid.
Well,
You
look
were
at the
good.
3 examples he had ahead of him. By that time, we were kind of grown up and we were on our good behavior.
Yeah.
So he just had good examples.
And I knew all the things that you got spanked for.
So you didn't go up on the roof.
I can remember going up on the roof.
Well, now why didn't you get spanked if I got spanked?
Didn't get caught.
But did you go up on the roof of the front porch or just the roof of the back?
I don't remember.
The
I don't
dormer.
remember going up past
Now,
the
it
dormer.
wasn't too bad to go out that dormer. I don't remember
Go
ever
out
doing it
Go out that
myself.
window.
But that
and around
but
the
what
side
she
and up
did
a
was
little
go
bit.
out and the dormer and up the roof and
Oh, I
straddled the,
straddled
straddled
Right
the
up to
front
the
a
porch.
little
Right up to the
peak there
top.
and waved at everybody as they were going by. It's a wonder somebody didn't stop and
How old were you?
tell her. I don't know, but I was little. I was little.
Mm.
And Mother called me,
Mhm.
and I didn't go down.
She didn't know where you were.
No, she didn't know where I was. But anyway, that's enough for that. So what else did
Well,
we
I think that's pretty
Clarence
good.
had some interesting friends. The workmen on the street,
Oh, yeah. When they dug the street up.
Oh, put in
they were
that
putting
big
in
cold
sewer
water.
pipes
The
or
big-
something.
The big old, the storm sewers. And these were pipes that were probably 6 feet in diameter, inside diameter, and they were buried, what, 20 feet?
Pretty
It's
far
really
down.
deep. They had big wooden sides constructed all the way. And I'd love to go up and talk to Mr. Kirsten.
Kirsten?
Kirsten was his name. He's the one that I like to talk to the most. And he was an old man. I don't know what we talked about, but he was just always real nice, probably about fishing. Always seemed to talk about fishing with people.
Hmm.
And then there was another guy, but I don't remember who it was. Joe Kirsten was the guy.
Well,
I remember that. But, with other friends around there, of course, later, like a little girl, Arnold Becker, lived across
Oh,
the street
yes.
in between the Paul.
and Marjorie
Hikers.
Becker and another.
Marjorie and Lorraine. And Marjorie and Lorraine, of course, were a lot older than I was. They were real whole bunch older. They were your age.
They were old.
Margie was Steve's age. And Lorraine, I think, was fairly close to me, maybe a little younger than
Hmm.
And her dad was Allie. And, of course, the Joneses up on the corner. Paul and Rosemary.
And Hunters, remember Bernadette? Bernagale.
No, I don't remember.
Bernie, there were 2
Bernie.
boys.
Bernie,
Bernagale.
they just called him
They
Bernie.
called him Bernie.
I don't remember what the other
Hunter,
one
I can't think of the Russell Hunter.
could be.
Where'd they live?
They lived
Lived on
across the
7th
street
Street.
from Jones's, kind of up
Okay, I
They
don't
were-
remember them.
a little farther down the street than Jones's, but Jones's were right on the corner. I think it would be Kittywampus across.
Anyway, so I don't remember that. They,
And there was a girl.
I remember a
Hunter,
girl that
too.
lived
One
in one
girl.
of those, but I can't remember her name.
And do you remember the Maddockers
Mm-hmm.
that lived down on the corner and Adolf?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he was
He
rode
was,
on
handicapped.
He was
he
handicapped.
was handicapped, right.
And he had
Always wave.
always wave, and he was always on a skateboard, really, wasn't it?
A little platform on
Mhm, that's how he got around, because he couldn't walk.
But he'd always
skateboard
wave
all over.
and say hi.
Vernon Bethel was another one that lived up on the corner, across from
Mhm.
the Steinbreaker house, next to the painters. Remember the painters?
Oh, yeah.
You're one of the original vacuum cleaner salesmen.
Harold Painter was in the hospital at the same time I was when I hurt my leg. And you remember Harold?
Mhm.
And I haven't seen him since then, but I think he had a leg amputated.
Oh. Diabetes?
Yes, plus other things too. I don't know. So that was pretty much the neighborhood.
It is raining hard. But, then when I hit first grade, by that time, then I started playing with Bob Schaefer. We became good friends in first grade.
Clear down on Fifth Street.
Right over on Fifth Street. And Donald Torkey, who lived on.
King's Highway, didn't it?
No, he was not. That was his uncle. What's his name?
Down
Gus?
there
Gus
by
Torkey?
Vernon.
Yeah, they
Duncan
lived down
store?
but they lived on that street that kind of
Oh,
semi-extended
yeah,
from
I know-
Gallagher,
I
but
know
I don't
the
remember what it
street.
was.
I don't know what it is, street it is either. It came out on to King's
Mhm.
Highway, or 6th Street.
Yeah, kind of the intersection
Yeah.
of Kings Highway Street. And I played with him a little bit. He was my age in the class.
And his sister Jane, I think, was
Yeah.
in,
He was a little older.
he was older. I think she was in Clarence's, in Steve's class. Would there be that much difference?
I don't remember it
Because
being
she
that.
was older than
much.
I was.
No, and it couldn't have been far from Steve.
So,
And, of course, the early years, we've already mentioned before, is Peggy and Bill. And Norman Birch, I played with quite a bit when he was there. And Rita. Pretty much.
One of the things that I remember as far as equipment is concerned, how we had to go to the basement to use the ice box. Didn't have any refrigerator, of course. And had the ice box down in the basement so it could drain. Occasionally, to save money, if it was cold enough, we'd just use a box on the back porch. Didn't even have ice, just put the milk or whatever in a box that was up next to the house, and that would be our refrigerator. That's when, if it
In the
was
winter?
cold enough, yes, in the winter time. And of course, sometimes the milkman would deliver the milk on the front porch, and if we didn't pick it up right away, it would freeze, and the top would
Raise
Oh, I
up.
can remember that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Had those little cardboard tops on them.
Mhm.
And remember the Iceman that used to bring the ice?
Oh, yeah.
It would give us little slivers of ice if we'd ask him.
When we lived on Washington Street before we moved to the Kings Highway place, I can remember, and maybe you did too, going out and getting the pieces of ice, as you said, and sometimes I think he was a black man, he'd let us ride around with him a little ways. He wouldn't let us ride very far, but we could ride in the ice truck a little ways.
I
I
don't
never
remember
got to do
that.
that.
Well,
I
that
don't
was
think I
before
got to
Clarence
do
was in
that
the
either.
picture.
But I remember running along behind him, wanting ice, and he'd throw them out to us, or give them to us.
Or maybe we just got up on the truck while he was inside, that could have been, and then he,
Give it to us.
I don't know.
But we had the big cards we'd have to put in the window.
The
to tell how
squares.
much
Whether you
ice.
wanted 25, 50, or 100 pounds of ice.
Early remote
Yes.
messages. And then, of course, about that time, I remember the ice cream man who came along and he ringing the bell and the horses pulling their.
And the
Horse pull all the time.
groceries that were delivered to the kitchen. Les Hoffman would come in, bang on the door, groceries, and he'd come right on in
Mm-hmm.
and deliver the groceries.
And-
I didn't remember Les Hoffman doing
Yeah,
that.
Les
He
Hoffman.
I
was
didn't
Dun-
remember that he
Dunyan.
did
Les
it
Hoffman
either.
was one down at Dungan's.
Mhm.
But I remember when Daddy paid the bill at the end of the month, they would always send a little bag of candy for us
Mhm.
whenever the bill was paid.
Be interesting to do that now, wouldn't it? Run a tab at the grocery store.
And then after Dungan's left, Myers had
Yes.
that place, and I can remember when I got an ice cream cone down there for a nickel one time.
Oh, yes.
And I just got outside with it, and I guess I didn't hold it up, but all the ice cream fell out, and I started to cry, and I went back in and showed them my ice cream cone, and they filled it up for me again.
Where was this?
It was Dungan's store, but under new operators.
I don't
It was
remember.
Myers.
Myers. Now Grace
Grace
Meyer,
Harmon was a Grace Meyer.
and
and-
she's the one that married Ray Harmon. Grace Meyer.
I didn't remember anybody but Dungeons ever ordering home in that store.
Oh, yeah.
So, when did this sale take place?
I don't remember when it took place, but
They were the last ones to have it.
yeah, the
weren't they?
Myers, I think, were the last ones
And
to
then
own
they-
it. Then it was turned into a
Animal
shoot.
hospital.
Yeah,
or
that was it,
something.
veterinarian.
I remember when it was a veterinary hospital, and that was after I.
Grace and Virginia. Virginia Meyer was the other
Right.
one.
That's right.
Grace and Virginia.
Virginia was older.
Oh, yes.
I sure didn't remember that.
That pillow doesn't have to be there, Mary. It's in your way.
That's fine. No,
It keeps you
really-
from leaning too far
really
back.
feels good to have something behind my back.
You don't want to get back behind the line of the lamp.
Oh, okay. Okay, am I all right?
I think so.
Okay. Well, let's see, what else?
You're close. May be comfortable.
I will.
We used to go to the park to play a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and
Now, did you all play tennis the way
I didn't.
I played tennis a little bit, but
We
not
used to
nearly
get-
as much as you did.
get permits? We have to go out, I guess it was Monday night, I think, some certain evening that we'd go out and get permits for the week. We were permitted an hour in the afternoon and an hour at night, but we'd all go together. I'd get an hour, and Ann or Rose would get another hour adjoining that, so that we could play 2 or 3 hours.
No, we-
And then they put in the swimming pool.
Mhm.
I
Which
remember
was
when they put
quite
it in
a
swimming
tradition.
pool.
That was nice.
And had the band concerts out there later on. You played in the band out there.
Didn't Steve play in the band for a while, or did
I
he?
don't know whether he ever did or not.
think
Did
he
he
ever
ever
did.
play?
I'm not sure. He played in the high school band, but
Right,
I
I
don't
know.
think he played in the city band.
I didn't remember. I kind of thought he did too.
I could be wrong, but I don't believe he did.
You know,
I
that
don't know.
was, there were several of us in high school that played in that city band. Bill Brooms, Bob Schaefer, I think, played, Kenny Colquire. And probably Gene Field, remember Gene?
Yes.
Wavy hair, black wavy hair.
Mhm. And I
Related to
think
the
maybe
Westerfelds, wasn't
Harold
he?
Meyer maybe did. And, that was a lot of fun every Thursday night. We rehearsed on Monday night.
They still have band concerts on Thursday night.
Maybe we should go down there Thursday night.
And,
Maybe they might not have it since it's the 4th of July. Since they've
I
had
told
so
you that-
many
I
things
bet you
going on.
Leo remembers who the Whistler was that was playing in the band when I was there.
Probably Vincent.
That
When
doesn't
he
sound
was
right.
there,
That doesn't sound right.
Vincent was your age.
He was in my class. But anybody played in the city band.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're talking
there-
about the city band.
Yeah, there were a lot of older people, but I don't think it was Vincent. It just doesn't sound
Well,
right.
he died when he was in.
He was in college. He
See,
was
this
in college
this-
when he died.
Yeah, see, this was an older
Oh.
person.
Oh, I know. It was Clarence Wessler. Not Whistler, Wessler. Clarence Wessler.
Maybe
I
you're
don't
right.
know.
That played. He was, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's who it was.
But there was P.D. Decker, was an old guy that played in that.
Yeah.
Remember him? Played
Yeah.
clarinet.
Maybe that's the one I was thinking
And
Because I think maybe.
of. I think maybe it was.
who was the director of that band?
Cannot remember.
There's someone that had a funny name, like a foreign
Mhm.
name, and whose daughter
was-
belonged to,
He was director for many, many years.
and his daughter played a violin, I know
Oh.
that, but I don't remember what the name was.
I can't remember who it was.
I have to go through some of my Historical Society magazines. I kept many of them. Well, I've thrown them away now, but I kept a lot of them.
And then, whoa, we almost lost our lights here.
Camera didn't go off.
Have to reset the clocks.
It went on battery anyway.
The, Remember the productions at the high school, the old minstrels?
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't do that now.
Oh, no.
No, that's right. I don't remember it really, that one.
They didn't do it while I was there, but
Oh,
I
I
remember
did.
seeing
Because I
them.
remember the Floridora Sextet.
I remember when you were in that.
Had these dresses, the dresses from the 90s and great big hats. And let's see, I guess there were six girls and 6 boys. I've forgotten who was my partner. I believe Gerald Reeves was my partner. I'm not sure. I think he was, because we were the shortest ones. And John Mudd was in it. He couldn't sing too well, but he was a good-looking guy. And Carl Lehman. And I don't remember the other boys, but I remember those. Oh, Ralph Talkey was one. I don't know which ones of them could sing, if any of them. Well, Gerald Reeves could sing. And then another one that I was in was sort of a tap dance, sort of a shuffle tap dance thing to the tune of I Love Louisa. I love Louisa, Louisa loves me. I don't remember the others, but I remember those 2 performances.
I can remember one that I think Steve was in. It was a vaudeville.
Was he an in man by any chance?
I think he was an announcer.
Oh, I believe you're right.
I don't remember this.
You don't mean Mr. Interlocutor? Or
I
not
don't
that-
remember
that-
any detail.
that would have been the minstrel. Had an interlocutor. It had a white man as the announcer, and there were end men who were black, who did the mischief and pulled the pranks.
I don't think that was it.
I don't, because Steve was only 2 years older than I was.
We'd have to get some
We
old
didn't have
Charlemos
any
out. Get some old
minstrels.
Charlemos out and
Any
see what.
minstrels then.
See.
Yeah, I don't remember it being a minstrel. I remember it as being a classical vaudeville type.
That could have been.
And then they started giving musical plays, musical productions with the
Mhm.
orchestra playing the music and people singing, and there'd be a story to go with it.
When I was in high school, we did HMS Pinafore.
Carmelita, we did. Steve
I remember
and
when they did the Pinafore, I believe it was in Shelbina. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Daddy directed it. I could be
Well,
wrong.
well,
I could, no, they had a
probably did.
music teacher. They had a music teacher, Miss Reedy.
Well, where was it that Mother was in Makata?
That was when they were both students in Kirksville.
When we did it, Beverly Stukenbroker did the female lead. She could really sing. And who was that? I can't remember who the male for it. But it was a lot of fun. I was in the orchestra.
I can remember a play or a musical called Carmelita.
I
And
don't
Steve
remember.
Steve and I were both in that, because that's when both of us were in.
I
But I
probably
can't
saw it, but I don't
remember.
remember.
Can't remember anything else. But I know there was something every year.
Did Dad teach every one of us to drive? He taught me to drive.
He
Oh,
didn't
no, he
teach
didn't
me.
teach you, Mr.
Mr. Wilson
Wilson.
taught me, and then he was killed in an accident later.
Driving
He
the
was
way he
driving,
told you
he
not
was
to.
driving alone.
Hmm.
He told you never to sit in the center of the steering post. Right?
Did I tell you that?
Mm-hmm. He told me that. And that was what killed him.
Is that
I
right?
remembered that. Because I had known beforehand what you had told me.
Oh.
So that impressed me.
I don't even remember. I don't remember that. But
Told her not to sit in the center of the steering post.
Directly in front of the steering post.
Well, how do you avoid that?
Nowadays, it's no problem. They're called collapsible.
Oh,
But before.
Well, how
Well,
could
I'd
you,
sit to
how
one
could
side
you
or the
steer?
other. I'd sit to
How-
one side or the other.
Oh, that, you couldn't steer straight then.
Oh,
But anyway, he's the
you
one
don't
that
sit in the
taught
middle of
me.
the car anyway. When you steer, you don't sit in the middle of the car when you steer. You're always on the side.
Yeah, but the steering wheel's on the side.
Oh, what's that got to do with it?
Okay. No, Dad taught me to drive.
I used to get out and go out in the backyard in the alley, and I'd put posts in the stakes in the driveway. And this was before I was 16, and I would practice driving between those stakes to learn to judge where the car was. Back and forth, back up.
Well, you're a pretty good driver if you could do that. I
And
think.
I don't remember how close I put it, but my purpose was to learn to judge where the car was.
Well,
Apparently I'd heard Dad talk about how that could be a problem. Dad let me drive before I was 16, but not alone.
Well, did he teach you?
Hmm.
Did he teach you?
mm-hmm. He must have taught Steve, I don't remember. He attempted to teach Mother.
Yeah, but didn't Mother ever learn
Well,
to drive?
she did drive a little bit, but I remember when we were going to Grandma Blackhurst and we got to the Grand River Bridge, it scared her to death and she wouldn't go across that bridge, and she never did drive after that. I don't think she ever drove alone, but only when Dad was in the car, and very little at that. But I do remember he did attempt to teach her.
I think one of her problems is that she was one of the original inventors of the chicken game, where she sat down so low she couldn't see, and somebody had to tell her to turn right or turn left.
Yeah, she was, it was in the day before adjustable seats, and she couldn't see over the, I'm sure that's right.
And Uncle Albert was very short,
Yeah.
and he had long extenders put on his pedals.
Oh, is that right?
I remember that on his clutch and his brake,
Hmm.
because
I
he couldn't.
didn't know that either. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember he showed him to me once when he was visiting him. Now you two probably remember somebody that I don't. That's my namesake, Uncle Clarence.
I
I
don't
don't
remember.
remember him, no.
You
I
heard
don't.
him?
remember him.
I know his pictures. I know what he looked
Mhm.
like. But I
But
don't
see, he
remember him.
died in the war, 1918. I don't know if he
Oh, I
died.
didn't realize it was that long ago.
Yes, he died, it was when so many people had the flu,
I
awful
really
flu,
had.
during World War I.
Consumption, is that what they call it?
Yes, and I don't know what year he died, but it was during that time. I don't remember him, other than just hearing people talk about him and seeing his pictures.
Yeah, I thought you didn't know him. But,
But speaking of
Because let's see, the war was over, wasn't the war over in 1918?
I don't remember.
1914 it started.
I think
didn't
it was over in 1918, I'm not sure. So I would have just have been 2 years old. Maybe I saw him sometime, but I don't remember.
That's the year Winston was born.
Was it that early?
What?
That the war was over, World War I was over?
I don't know. Not, oh yeah.
I'll have to look it up, but I think it was.
But speaking of our uncles, we mentioning Uncle Clarence and Uncle Albert, some of my fondest memories are going to Uncle Melvin's and Aunt Mildred's every summer. I loved those trips.
Yes, I did too. I can remember Uncle Max riding the horses
Mm-hmm.
and the green mules.
Green?
Green?
Mhm.
Gray. Gray mules.
They were green in the sun.
Oh.
Right way.
Oh. And I
And-
remember the big tank where they watered the horses all the time.
Out by
And the
by
windmill? Did you climb up the windmill?
I didn't.
I didn't either.
I got picked by the chickens though. I went out to tell them goodbye. I went to pick up the little chickens and hug them, and the big hens came up and flew up against me and pecked at me. Scared me to death.
I can remember Roger making a boat for me to play with in the tank.
Oh,
A
is
boat
that
that would
right?
go like heck. And I
Did he
heard,
say that?
yeah, and I told Mother that Roger made me a boat that would go like heck, and I had a lecture about language.
Say that, huh?
I said gosh one time, and I had to sit on a chair for doing that. But it was the way I said it too. I think I stomped my foot at the same time.
Oh, I'll do it every time. Yeah,
But it was all right for her to say good grief.
or good gravy, even in a dire circumstance.
Did she say that?
Oh, yeah. She got really mad. Good grief.
Well, let's see, what else did, and going to Siloam Springs to see Aunt
Remember
Ted,
some of that?
Aunt Lily. No, she was there for a while.
She would visit. She was
would
sometimes
visit.
there if she was visiting.
But we did visit them out
Out in-
west, didn't
yes.
I just
In Wyoming.
barely remember that.
we? In
The
Wyoming.
crickets.
Oh, I remember the crickets, but I
Okay.
didn't
That
remember
was the
where they
same.
were.
That was the same
Was that
summer,
that
I
trip?
think.
Mhm.
And this summer, there was something in the paper about crickets out in the west somewhere, Wyoming, Idaho, or somewhere. And I
Well,
thought of you then.
I can remember we're stopping. I probably got sick or something, not from them, but I got car sick.
Car sick, yeah.
And I get out of the car, and here was this carpet of crickets, and I was scared to death.
Well, you could hear them pop when you'd
You
run
could hear
over.
'em pop.
You could hear them pop.
Yeah,
The
slippery.
cement was just oily, or looked like oil from the crickets that were mashed all over.
And do you remember what Daddy said? When a cow went in front of the car, a cow started going across in front of
Holy
us,
cow.
and he said, "You thought those crickets popped. Wait till you hear this." And of course, he was just laughing and acting silly, but I remember that.
I don't remember.
It was a narrow, real narrow road,
Well,
and
they
this
probably
cow
all were
was
narrow in
walking
those days.
across,
And we were in
and we were all
open range, probably.
watching these old crickets and disgusted with them, and then this cow came up. But I remember that. I thought that was pretty funny.
I don't remember that.
But he didn't hit the
And we
cow.
have family pictures of us playing in the snow that summer.
Mount Lookout?
No, it wasn't Mount Lookout. Berthoud Pass, I think it was.
It was around in there.
Were there 2 trips out west? No,
There-
did you make one before I came along?
There was a trip, there was a trip that we went to Colorado when Dad was in summer school.
Yeah, that's the one that I was alone, I think.
And we stayed for a week.
Yeah, he was in summer
a
school
motor
for
lodge.
a week or two.
There was somebody with a whole bunch of animals around, monkeys.
I don't remember that.
But now, I don't know if that's the same summer we went on to Laramie, Wyoming, and Aunt Lily's
I
or
thought
not.
it was.
It could have been.
But I
That was-
remember the owners of that trailer, or not trailer, but cabin,
We called them
Place.
tourist cottages then.
tourist cottage, okay.
But now it'd be a motel.
They had a little girl that was just 2 years old, and I just loved playing with her. I remember that. Just thought she was so cute. But that's
And of course, we went out west before you kids were even on the scene. When Steve was 8 months old, and I was 4, evidently. And Grandma and Grandpa Fish went with us. It was Mother and Dad's honeymoon.
Oh, that's nice.
Took their 2 kids and their parents.
Well, who was it? We were talking someplace the other day about somebody taking, I guess it was a letter to Abby or somebody about parents wanted to go with a young couple on their honeymoon. Abby didn't think it was a good idea. But I can remember another thing on the trip, at least the one trip I can remember. I can remember going up a mountain, and I think it was Lookout, so I mentioned that. And where, is that where,
Buffalo Bill?
Will Rogers, Buffalo Bill. Okay, I remember that. And I remember Steve getting out of the car and hiking down.
Hmm.
And we would be on these back and forth hairpin things, and he'd go across, and I don't know how far down he went. We picked him back up again. And I can remember that.
I don't know which trip it was, but I remember sometime getting up real early to go up. We didn't drive up, took a cog railway up to see the sunrise on Pikes Peak.
I don't remember that.
Maybe I was the only one that got to go because I was the oldest. But I do remember going up with Mother and Dad or with somebody, must have been Mother and Dad, up to see the sunrise at the top of Pikes Peak.
I don't remember.
Had to get up in the middle of the night to take this little cog railway up and then sit there in the cold and watch for the sun
Oh, no, I
rise.
didn't even. Did Dad go to Colorado State or University of Colorado?
It was in Denver. I don't know where it was. But I remember it was Denver because, see, I was in Lindenwood at the time, and there was a girl from Lindenwood that was not a real friend, but a sort of a friend of mine that lived in Denver. Lucille Becker was her name, or Louise Becker, Lucille Becker, I don't know. But anyway, I visited her while we were out there.
No, I don't remember.
But we had some wonderful trips. The trip up to
Devil's Lake.
Devil's Lake and Duluth, through that area.
Remember riding the rails and that was Traverse Bay,
Traverse City?
at Traverse City, Michigan.
Oh, okay, and these logs were out in the,
Yes.
yeah, I do remember that,
Was
out in
I
the
home?
water. I doubt it.
Probably
I
not.
doubt it.
I doubt it. But we had a cabin with didn't it have a screen porch on it?
Probably.
It was
That
right
must
on
have
the
been
water,
another summer
right
that
by
Dad
the
went to
water.
summer school. He went to summer school at Madison, Wisconsin one summer,
Oh,
and we were up there for a week or two.
but that was.
Our summer vacations became a combination of practical situations and vacation situations.
And they took us to Washington DC.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember going
I know I
there?
was at home with Grandma.
Oh, you were at home.
I think I was.
That was quite an experience on its own.
Well, I remember staying at home with Grandma one time, Steve and I both. You probably got to go, 'cause you were a big girl. But, I remember Grandma stayed with us. We lived on Washington Street then.
Oh.
Because we got to go to the store every day and spend a penny.
Hmm.
Get a sucker
Maybe
or
that was when we
something.
went up to a family reunion,
Maybe. I don't know.
because I think we went to the first family reunion when we lived on Washington Street. Of course, we didn't go every year, but
I don't know where you went, but I know that
I know
Steve
I
and
went. I went
stayed
when
back.
others of you weren't able to go.
But Grandma would walk with us and take us to the store every day.
Well, I think I must have been 2 or 3 when you went to Washington D.C. Do you remember what year you went?
I think I was a junior in high school, but maybe I was in Lindenwood.
I don't remember when it was, but I remember going.
I don't remember it as a bad experience staying with Grandma. I remember it as
I must
fun.
have been in Lindenwood because I met this guy, Ted Milliken,
Oh, I remember that name.
Is that
and
the,
he later visited me when I was in Lindenwood. And we used to write letters.
isn't he the one we used to sing around the corner and under the tree? The handsome major made love to me.
Could have been, but
And
he
that
didn't
was
make love to me.
popular. No, it was popular at that time.
Oh,
And we'd sing it to tease you.
we did hold hands. I remember walking along must have been the Potomac River or somewhere, and we did hold hands.
Well, I remember we used to sing that just to tease you.
Of course, back in those days, making love wasn't much more than holding hands.
I guess that's right.
Well, yeah.
No,
But that was a nice trip.
Yes, we all learned a lot when we went to Washington D.C., I think. Learned a lot of history.
We went through the, the Capitol, and I think we went through the White House, didn't we? Sure we did.
Yes, and we
Sure we
went
did.
to, at least I think it was on this trip. I think that's the only time I was there. No, I was there another time, when Marguerite Simpson and I went on a trip. But didn't we go to the Custis, what? Washington's home?
Oh, Mount Vernon?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think we did. And we went to the Mint. Wasn't there a...
Yes, I remember going to the Mint sometime or other. That was when we were just kids.
But we were pretty fortunate to have
Yeah.
all the trips, all the vacations we got to go on together.
Yeah. I guess one of the early ones that I got to go, and I think you went, Leo didn't. Steve was there when we went up to Ely, Minnesota.
There was a
Remember that?
fishing trip that
Yeah, it
I
was a
didn't get
fishing
to
trip.
go on. There's
Oh,
one
maybe you
I
didn't
didn't
go
get
then.
to go.
Maybe you didn't go
There's
then.
a fish, and I don't know why I didn't go.
It was just Steve.
But there was a fishing trip that you all went.
Okay, I was
Sometime.
thinking
I don't
there.
remember when it
I
was.
remember Steve was
But I didn't go.
there, but I was thinking that you were there. I knew Leo was.
But I
Yeah,
know
that
I've
was-
get
that was a lot of
letters
fun.
about the fish that you all were catching, and
Mother got the biggest fish of any of us.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't even legal.
oh,
Probably the only time I ever saw her deliberately do something illegal. We'd be
Did
up-
she know it wasn't legal?
Sure, she knew it. She didn't have a fishing license, and she was in the boat with us. And she was holding a fishing line with her hand, no pole. And first thing you know, why, just calmly doing this, we're not paying too much attention to her. You know, folks, that big old northern pipe into the boat, and they're mean.
Mm.
And it was a big one. And I can still remember that one. That was by far the biggest fish we got on the whole trip.
well,
I enjoyed that trip. Even the leeches, we'd get out, Steve and I'd go out to a rock, and we'd swim around a rock in the lake. And we could get leeches all over us. Go back and
yeah.
clean them off.
Which trip was it that Steve had all of his rocks and all of his chanting and bowing?
That was-
And, was that in
That was through the
Michigan?
south, no, that was through the southeast. Along the Appalachian, was it Appalachian Trail? What's the mountain? Smoky Mountain.
Great smoky
Area.
down south.
But
That wasn't the same year we went to Washington D.C.
could have been.
I just remember
It could have been.
how
Could have been
serious
both,
he
too.
seemed to be.
Luray Caverns. I remember we couldn't afford to go in there, but we had one of the tags on our car. When we came home, everybody thought we'd been to Luray Caverns.
I've been through them.
I
Oh,
haven't.
my.
We camped down there when our kids.
I'll bet that was when we went to Washington D.C. because it would have been in that direction.
But I just remember how funny he was.
You know, he had all those rocks that he prayed to. They were nice, smooth rocks, weren't they?
And he'd build things with them and go like this, before them and chant, and I don't know what he thought he was doing.
Well, he must have had some Indian stories or Indian films somewhere along the way or something.
But he seemed very serious.
Mm. Well, now we still have a couple of brown, smooth rocks of Mother's that I think came from Lake Superior.
Well,
We have several rocks that came from there. You gotta figure out a way to hang on to those or pass them on.
Need to label them. But, and then all the many, many Christmases that we had there
Yeah?
with all the families as we grew up and as we got older.
I can remember the first picture I can remember. Steve setting up the little box camera, the Brownie box camera, and he took the lamps and tilted them over sideways. They had things at the top, reflectors types at the top, and pointed it at us.
Mm-hmm.
And the tree, I think, was over to the right of the fireplace as you look at it. The piano wasn't in there yet.
Oh,
And he took a picture of all of us, and Grandma was in it there.
Hmm.
And, I don't remember how he got in it himself, but I don't think it had a timer in there. But I think yes, it did. That picture's around someplace.
probably.
Because I think that was the year I got the little drum set.
I was gonna say, I remember a picture that has a drum set in it. I don't know where it is, but it,
I think I probably got some nicer Christmas presents than all you kids got.
well, sure.
There were advantages of being the last one.
Well, now, do you remember special Christmas presents that you got? Any?
I remember one
stand out in
special
your
one. I
mind?
remember one special one. A knitted cap and scarf. It was orange and white striped. I remember that was real special to me. That was when we lived on Kings Highway. Probably soon after we moved there.
Well, I remember two that were very special. One was a little doll cradle, little turquoise, aqua colored doll cradle, and the other was my violin.
Oh,
I was so happy to
That
get
was a Christmas present. Well,
Yes, I got that for
You
Christmas.
still have it?
No, Chris or Peggy, one of the two has it. Either Chris or Peggy. I think it's Chris. No, that one was lost. When Peggy was growing up, we took it to a store, a music store over in St. Louis County, and they were going to rehair the bow
Mm-hmm.
and fix it up so that Peggy could learn on it. When we went back to get it, they had rented it out to a student in one of the school districts, and they didn't know where it was. And we ended up buying a new violin, but they took $100 off. We bought a $200 violin for $100, but I didn't have mine anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So Peggy kept the one we bought, and I ended up with no
You got
violin.
nothing.
But anyway, that's where that violin is.
has the air conditioner run since the lights flickered?
I don't think so.
I haven't been aware.
Want to take a break? Check it.
Yeah.
We are on. What do you remember about our involvement with the folks in the church? Is there something that we can bring up on that? I know I had an interesting thing. I could tell what the situation that happened out where I am now. That I'm serving on a Presbytery committee in Columbus right now, and we open those meetings with a discussion of some personal thing in our lives. And in one particular meeting, we were discussing our baptism. So I had told them that I was at the St. Charles Presbyterian Church, and that our family had a tradition at that time of immersion for baptism. So I was taken into a church in St. Louis, I can't remember the name of it, for baptism. And when I mentioned that, one of the people on the committee popped up and said, I used to intern at that church. And here this was Lynn Wybrew, was his name, or is his name, and he remembered having Joanne in his class. He knew Steve in the Blackhurst family. Do you remember Lynn?
No, I don't remember.
And Joanne told me the other day at the reunion that she remembered him quite well, and that she had always thought he was one of the neatest youth directors that she's ever known.
Well,
That he really did a great job with her and the group there. That they really liked him. She wants me to send his address, his
Oh,
address so she can
neat.
write to him. But I thought that was kind of interesting, and I talked to him a little bit afterwards. But,
I remember there was never any question about whether we'd go to Sunday school and church. It was just automatic.
We did.
You just knew that was Sunday. You always went to Sunday school and church.
one of the teachers I remember most was Mary. You
Sunday
taught-
school
Sunday
teacher?
school teacher, Mary
I
taught us.
wasn't Sunday.
Mary taught us
Harlow
Sunday school
Keiser.
class.
I
Mhm.
had Harlow Keiser and
John Jordan.
yes,
Hmm.
all that bunch.
Yeah, I remember
Enjoyed
that.
And I had the children's church back there too,
Yeah,
the
I
real
don't
little
remember, I
kids.
don't
During
remember much.
during the regular church, we had children's church and tried to do things at the same time. When about the time they'd be taking up offering, we'd take up our offering and do things.
Good idea.
There's something I'd like to say about church. Remember when Mother and Daddy used to go to church on Wednesday nights, prayer meeting or something?
Yeah, prayer meeting.
And occasionally I'd
And
go
choir
with them.
practice was Wednesday night too,
Was
usually,
it?
I think.
But I remember when we would sing Little Brown Church of the Vale, and Daddy's foot would be going, oh, come, 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 come. And I remember sitting there watching that, and other times, and his voice in singing, come, come, come. That just impressed me.
Mhm.
You were with us, weren't you, when Steve took us this little trip up to, that place in
Iowa?
Illinois or Iowa, and we saw the little brown church in the
Yes, I
Vale.
was with you.
Yes.
That was one of those trips that was a spur of the moment. Let's just go down the road
Mm-hmm.
and see this place.
Steve and Irene, well,
I
no,
was-
we left here.
I was thinking that these two were with us, but they said
I
that
don't
they
think so,
weren't.
no.
We were
It was Steve and
talking about
Irene
that.
and you and me. I think just the four of us.
But that was a neat outing.
How long were you gone on that?
I don't know, 2 or 3 days. I don't
I
remember
don't
where
remember where we stayed
but
ever.
I don't remember where we spent. I do remember spending a night somewhere. I don't know the name of the place, but it was a motel out near some garages and
I don't remember.
filling stations and stuff. Irene might remember.
But I remember taking pictures. I had my little thing for my hair that looked like a pitchfork, you know, one of these little
Oh, mm-hmm.
teaser things. And we stood out, I think Steve and I, in front of a barn and held it up for our
Oh,
pictures.
yes, for
Oh,
the,
To,
Who was that? Grant
Grant.
who? Grant who?
Grant Wood.
Wood.
Grant
Grant
Wood.
Wood.
that's what we were talking about the other day. But, well, back to church. Daddy was always in the choir.
Was there ever a time that you and Mother and the four of you sang in the choir together?
Daddy and I did. Were
I
you
don't
there
remember
when
being
I-
in the choir when you were, but
I don't
Maybe I was.
remember it when you
I remember when Mother and Dad were in the choir when
I
I was.
wasn't in it when they were, but just Daddy and I were at one time.
I don't remember, I guess it was Pearl Schauberg and Lois Lane that we got so gigglish when we'd sing as we came into the choir loft. And what was the song we were singing? Honored Christian Soldiers, I guess. You who unto Jesus for refuge have fled or something. But anyway, as we came around the corner, we were saying, you who unto Jesus.
And I remember Mary used to laugh about that.
Mary and I used to go to Good Friday services together and laugh about some of the hymns, and I don't remember what we got tickled
I
at.
don't either, but well, the one I get tickled at, but this really has nothing to do with our growing up. But I had a hole in my stocking one time.
Well, that would be
Did I
hilarious.
tell you about this? I was this was after I was grown. I stopped at our roses and picked a rose and got a snag in my stocking. Well, you know how they'll pull? By the time I got to church, there were two big holes right at my calf of my leg. And we were late because I'd stopped to get rose, I guess. Anyway, as we had to walk down to the pew, they were playing Holy, Holy,
Keep a straight face.
I was mortified. I didn't want to go down, and
You
Winston
just knew they were
insisted.
singing about you, didn't
Yes, Winston insisted there weren't any seats left in the back. We had to go down front. And, but then I started getting tickled because after we got in the pew, and they were at about the second verse, it said something about, "Only thou art holy, no one else beside thee." And that's the way, you read the
you? I
words
know.
to that
I
song.
know.
Anyway,
One of my
that
favorite
has
hymns.
nothing to do with our growing up, but I will never sing or hear that hymn without thinking of being the holy.
That's
Okay,
one of
let's
my
get back
favorite
to our,
hymns. Mm.
but they were all, and Mother one time, remember the Christmas pageant? And Mother sang "O Holy Night."
Yes.
It was
Remember.
so
Lovely.
pretty.
I remember when Mother lost her voice.
Well, this was before she lost her voice, and she had a beautiful
She often had
contralto.
solo parts in the
Low voice.
anthem.
And it was beautiful. I'm so proud of her.
Mm. Well, that, I can remember she was singing, but her singing, but I can't remember any details like that. And didn't Steve sing in the choir for a while or not?
I don't remember
I don't remember
that
either.
he did. Was it you or Steve that worked at the church?
I worked at.
That was you.
My first job was as a janitor.
Excuse me.
Janitor at our
Mhm.
church.
And about that time, they were putting in the new basement area for the kitchen, or the new kitchen area in the
It
basement.
seemed to me that the new kitchen area was in, but I can't remember
I
much
remember
about it.
making labels for cups and saucers and.
Steve probably sang in the choir when we moved to the new church. I don't remember. Kind of think he did. I will have to ask Irene.
What I remember most when I was janitor was that they had Dr. Harmon had shown me how to put the oil on the rag and dust the pews, but he didn't make it really clear on how much oil I should put on this dust draw. And I apparently got too much, and I had a lot of complaints from people about how oily the pews were. And they said, what was the other one I did? I was learning, I had to go up on Saturday night, this in the winter, and bank the fire. We didn't have it was a straight fire furnace. And I'd have to build the fire Saturday evening, get it going, and then bank it, which meant loading in a whole lot of coal up at the front, and so it didn't burn, but then it'd gradually burn into that load. And then that'd carry it through the night, get the church started warm, and I'd go in early Sunday morning and get it going right. Well, one of these times, I didn't get it banked right, and the fire went out, and it smothered, but it sent a lot of smoke up through the church when they do those. Do you remember that?
No,
I
no.
don't remember
And
that.
it created a problem, and the church was cold. I couldn't get it warm in time when I got in the morning, and it was embarrassing.
Mhm.
I don't remember that.
I had a lot to learn about firing and doing janitor work, I'll tell you.
I bet that was a hard job, too.
Yeah, it was. And the one thing that happened that was kind of interesting, that I'm not sure Dr. Harmon ever believed really happened in the sequence, but I was out cutting the grass, and the lawnmower was just in terrible shape. The grass was long, and it was very wiry, and I just wasn't strong enough or big enough to push that crazy thing, and I had, how did that sequence go? I think I had complained about it or something, and said, well, maybe we can do something. Well, very shortly after that, same day, this guy comes along who goes from door to door, sharpening lawnmowers. And he went to Dr. Harmon to see if we needed the lawnmower sharpened. I had absolutely nothing to do with sending him to Dr. Harmon, but I'm not sure that he ever felt that really happened the way it did.
He thought that you might have sent him or
Set
told
him
him to
up.
come,
Mhm.
but he did
He did
sharpen
sharpen it, and it needed it, and it was a lot better. But I was pretty little in those days,
Why?
and it was hard more to push.
Not bad.
Well, we have any other things that we remember? We need to put in here?
I'm sure there are a lot of things that we'll think of
No.
later on.
One real quick thing I want to mention is when Daddy was superintendent and he would come around and visit the schools, how nice it was to see him come into our classes. And he'd sit down with us in a reading circle. I don't know if you remember that. But we would have our reading circle in the little
Remember
chairs.
the reading circle?
And he would come up and would sit in with us and listen to us all read. And,
No, I don't remember.
I remember how they said you always waved to him, "Hi, Daddy," whereas the rest of us tried to ignore him, pretend he wasn't there.
I would just blurt out, "Hi, Daddy." I was so proud, you know.
Oh, we were proud too.
I know,
we
but
were...
I couldn't contain myself.
I remember some kid asking me, very early, if my dad owned the schools. But no, just part of it.
Oh! That's a good note to stop on.
Well, this has been a fun time, and for those of who may be watching, looking at this, and don't know by this time, this is Mary Blackhurst Wolf, Leonora Blackhurst Wilkinson, and I'm Clarence Blackhurst, and we're all kids of Steve and Elsie, and we have been telling you about some of our good times in growing up. Anything last?
I don't want to leave Steve out. Steve
Yes.
did all our other brother, who was
Good.
2 years older than I, and 4 years younger than Leo, and who passed away just a couple of years ago.
But he was in on a lot of the fun.
He made
And a lot of the trouble.
He made yes. But we all can be grateful. We had a happy family. We had parents that cared, and it was good.
Right.
Great growing up, and even after.
Right.
It's no wonder Mary Lou still wants to keep the name Blackhurst.